The forest was silent except for the soft rustle of leaves under the paws of the alphas. They moved slowly, their bodies tense and powerful muscles rippling beneath thick fur. Their eyes were fixed on the small motionless shape lying between the twisted roots of the ancient oak. The cub was barely recognizable, its tiny chest still, and its fur matted with the dark stains of the accident. The alphas lowered their heads and sniffed the air, their noses trembling at the scent of loss and grief. They circled once, then twice, then sat back on their haunches, as if waiting for the world to respond. The forest seemed to hold its breath, even the wind dared not stir. The sun filtered through the high canopy, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers over the ground. The alphas could hear the faint crackle of branches in the distance, a sound that made their ears twitch and their tails stiffen. Their instincts told them danger, but also curiosity. They had expected other predators, perhaps scavengers or hunters. Instead, they saw figures moving slowly among the trees, figures that walked upright with strange skin and soft eyes and hands that did not hold weapons. The humans paused at a respectful distance, their gazes fixed on the cub and then on the grieving alphas. There was no threat in their posture, no malice in their movement, only a careful quiet watching that made the alphas tilt their heads. Their growls were low and rumbling, but not directed at the humans. It was the sound of sorrow spilling from deep inside their chests. The humans whispered to each other words the alphas could not understand, but the tone carried empathy and hesitation. One human stepped forward, slowly reaching a hand not to strike or take but to show recognition of the pain that filled the forest. The alphas lifted their heads, their eyes meeting the human eyes, and in that moment something shifted. A bridge formed between instincts and understanding, between grief and compassion. The air was heavy with unspoken words, and the forest seemed alive with the weight of the encounter. The cub remained still, but the moment was not silent, for the alphas were learning that even in the presence of strangers, humanity could appear in ways they had never imagined. The alphas rose slowly, their powerful bodies moving with deliberate caution, as if each step carried the weight of sorrow and authority. Their eyes never left the humans, who remained still and patient, the soft light of the forest glinting on their skin and hair. The wind shifted, carrying scents of earth and leaves, and something new, something unrecognized but not threatening. The humans whispered again, their voices gentle, carrying emotion that the alphas could sense, even if they did not understand. The eldest alpha stepped closer, his paws sinking into the damp soil, his head lowered slightly, a silent question passing between him and the human, who mirrored the gesture with a slow bend of the knees. One of the humans crouched, now offering a small bundle of cloths, carefully placing it beside the cub. The alpha sniffed the offering, their nostrils flaring the scent. Foreign yet comforting. The younger alpha patted closer to the human, extending his snout, hesitating and then pressing it lightly against the soft texture. His tail flicked once, a movement that seemed almost like approval. The humans stepped back, giving space, and their eyes shone with something the alphas had never known: respect, or sorrow, or a mixture that left the wolves unsettled, yet relieved. The forest seemed to exhale around them, the tension melting but not disappearing entirely. For a long moment all four beings watched, the cub and each other, each feeling the unspoken understanding that had passed between predator and human. It was not fear, it was not aggression. It was recognition of life and loss of something precious, and the bond of grief could create in its silent weight. The alphas lowered themselves beside their cub, their sides brushing the soft earth, their heads lifting only to glance at the humans, who stayed their distance and waited with patience and a quiet strength that even the alphas could not ignore. The forest remained heavy with quiet as the alphas pressed close to their cub. Their grief was sharp and raw, but now tempered by a strange presence they could not ignore. The humans watched patiently, giving space, yet offering comfort in ways that were silent and deliberate. One human reached into a satchel and pulled out water, carefully pouring it into a shallow dish and stepping back, allowing the alphas to drink. The eldest alpha sniffed it cautiously, then lapped the cool liquid, his ears flicking at every sound. The younger alpha nuzzled the cub, gently letting out a low rumble that seemed to carry both sorrow and reassurance. The humans murmured again, their voices soft and melodic. Though the alphas did not understand the words, the tone filled the clearing with calmness. A breeze rustled the leaves, carrying the scent of rain and earth, and something faintly sweet that made the cub's fur stir slightly. The alphas lifted their heads, their ears alert yet not tense. For the first time since the loss they felt a shift, a recognition that not all creatures who walked upright were dangerous. Some carried empathy, some carried understanding, and some even carried grief that mirrored their own. The humans stood slowly, and one knelt briefly, bowing, slightly, a gesture of respect that the Alpha somehow understood. The sun broke through the canopy, illuminating the clearing in warm light, and for a moment the grief and fear of the forest seemed suspended, as if held by something invisible and powerful. The cub remained still, yet the atmosphere around it was charged with a quiet hope. The Alphas glanced at each other, and then back at the humans, acknowledging silently the unspoken truth that had been revealed here in the heart of the forest, that humanity could surprise with compassion, and that sometimes the fiercest hearts could meet without violence and with understanding. The Alphas rose fully, their powerful frames silhouetted against the soft golden light of the forest. Their eyes swept over the humans, once more, a mixture of caution and understanding lingering in their gaze. The cub lay still, but seemed lighter, somehow, as if the presence around it carried a quiet strength. The humans stepped forward together, and one extended a hand, gently touching the cub's fur without fear or haste. The eldest Alpha growled low, not in anger, but as a warning of presence, a reminder that the bond with their cub was sacred. Yet the humans did not retreat. Instead they knelt, offering patience and care. Their voices hummed softly, words the Alphas could not grasp yet. The tone conveyed solace and respect. The younger Alpha pressed his nose briefly against the cub's head, then turned slowly to study the humans. Curiosity mingled with caution. The forest around them was alive with subtle movements of wind and leaves and distant birds calling, and for the first time since the tragedy, it did not feel hostile. It felt as if the world itself acknowledged the moment. The Alphas circled their cub once more, then settled beside it, their sides brushing together, a shield of warmth and protection. The humans rose quietly, stepping back, giving the Alpha space, while still remaining near enough to offer aid if needed. The eldest Alpha lifted his head and met the gaze of the human leader, a silent conversation passing between them, a recognition that grief could be shared, that life could be honored, and that humanity had revealed itself, not as a threat but as a force capable of unexpected kindness. The forest grew quieter as shadows lengthened and the sun sank lower, painting the trees with gold and amber. The Alphas remained close to their cub, their bodies protective and vigilant, yet their eyes no longer carried the same raw fear. They had witnessed something. They could not ignore, something that shifted the weight in their chests. The humans moved slowly around the clearing, offering soft murmurs and gentle gestures. The eldest Alpha watched every movement, calculating yet feeling a strange calm that had not been there before. The younger Alpha stepped lightly closer to one of the humans, sniffing the air, then backing away quickly, but without hostility. The cub stirred slightly, its small chest rising and falling with a fragile rhythm. The humans smiled softly at the movement, their presence steady and non-threatening. The breeze carried scents of pine and moss, and the faint smoke from a distant fire blending with the earthy aroma of the forest. It seemed to the Alphas that the world had shifted slightly in tone, that the grief had not disappeared but had found a companion in understanding. The eldest Alpha tilted his head toward the humans, a silent acknowledgement that they had seen what he had seen, that humanity could surprise, that even in loss and sorrow there was room for compassion and respect, that life could still be honored in unexpected ways. Night began to settle over the forest, a deep velvet darkness stretching between the trees. The Alphas remained close to their cub, their breathing slow but steady, their eyes scanning every shadow for signs of threat. Yet there was no movement except the gentle sway of branches and the soft hum of distant insects. The humans lingered respectfully at the edge of the clearing, their presence steady, patient, and careful, as if they knew the weight of the moment. They had not approached recklessly, nor had they attempted to take the cub, only observation and quiet gestures of understanding. Their eyes met the Alpha's eyes, and in that gaze there was communication without words, a recognition of grief, a recognition of loss, and a recognition that life could hold unexpected kindness. The youngest Alpha nudged the cub gently, letting out a low rumble that vibrated through the clearing, and even the humans felt the weight of emotion that carried with it both sorrow and relief. The eldest Alpha stretched, then circled once more around the cub, their powerful frame moving with deliberate care. Their eyes swept over the humans again, a mixture of curiosity and tentative trust passing between them. The forest seemed to breathe with the moment, the wind whispering through the leaves and carrying the scent of earth and water and faint smoke from distant fires. The humans knelt briefly, bowing slightly, a gesture of respect and solidarity that the Alphas instinctively understood. The cub stirred more noticeably now, its tiny paws twitching and its eyes flickering. The Alphas settled down beside it, forming a protective circle around life and hope. The humans remained near enough to offer comfort, but far enough to respect the sacred bond between predator and cub, between grief and compassion, between two worlds meeting unexpectedly and finding understanding. That alphas lifted their heads one last time, eyes meeting the humans' eyes, acknowledging silently the truth they had witnessed, that humanity could surprise, that kindness could exist even where fear and sorrow were thick, that life could be honored, that grief could be shared, and that even in the darkest forest there was room for empathy, courage, and the quiet, unspoken strength of compassion. Dawn began to filter through the forest, a pale light stretching over the trees and casting long, gentle shadows. The alphas stirred slowly, their powerful bodies stretching and flexing muscles that had tensed through the night. The cub lay between them, its small body still fragile, yet moving with tentative life. The humans watched quietly from the edge of the clearing, their presence calm and reassuring, as if they understood the delicate balance they had entered. One human stepped forward, carefully carrying a small bundle of soft cloth, placing it gently near the cub for warmth. The eldest alpha lowered his head, sniffing the offering, then nudging it slightly with his nose. The younger alpha circled the humans, then paused, his ears flicking in cautious curiosity, yet there was no aggression, only interest. The cub let out a faint whimper, and the humans leaned slightly closer, their hands open and empty, a gesture of trust and patience. The forest around them seemed alive, with quiet celebration, birds calling softly, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. Even the distant mountains seemed to hum with a new energy. The alphas lifted their heads, their eyes meeting each other in silent agreement that this place and these beings had proven themselves worthy of recognition and respect. The humans whispered softly words the alphas did not know, but the tone carried reassurance and care. The cub shifted again, its small paws pressing into the earth, and for the first time since the tragedy the alphas felt hope swelling in their chests, a sense that life could continue, that grief could coexist with compassion, that the world was not only danger and loss but also moments of unexpected connection and trust. And as the sun rose higher, the clearing glowed with soft light, illuminating the cub and the alphas, and the humans standing nearby silently witnessing the birth of understanding, the meeting of worlds, and the unspoken promise that even in sorrow there could be hope. The forest grew brighter as the morning sun climbed higher, casting warm golden light across the clearing. The alphas remained close to their cub, their eyes scanning the humans with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Yet there was no fear, only a slow dawning understanding. The humans knelt quietly, offering water and soft murmurs, their hands extended but not pressing, just showing care. The youngest alpha stepped forward, sniffing the air, then circled the humans once before, returning to the cub, its tail flicking slowly in an almost hesitant gesture of trust. The eldest alpha watched every movement, their gaze steady and unblinking. A quiet energy filled the clearing, something unspoken passing between predator and human, grief and compassion intertwining in the cool morning air. The cub stirred more strongly, pressing against the ground and lifting its head briefly. The humans leaned closer, their eyes soft and gentle, and the alphas felt a shift deep inside, a recognition of the strength of understanding and the unexpected warmth of empathy. The wind carried scents of earth and leaves and distant smoke, and the forest seemed to lean closer to witness the moment that eldest alpha lowered its head briefly to the cub, then raised it, glancing at the humans as if acknowledging the truth that had been revealed, that humanity could surprise, that not all beings who walked upright brought harm, that some brought solace and kindness, and a reflection of what even the wild could not always provide. The youngest alpha pressed its nose lightly against the cub's side and let out a low rumble vibrating through the clearing, a sound that spoke of protection, reassurance, and the quiet acceptance of something larger than loss or fear. The humans stood, slowly giving space but remaining present, silently showing that compassion could cross boundaries, and that even in the heart of grief there could be recognition and hope. The clearing was filled with a quiet stillness. As the alphas settled around their cub, their bodies forming a protective circle, the humans remained nearby, their eyes soft and gentle, watching without intruding. The youngest alpha nudged the cub lightly, its tail flicking once in a slow rhythm, a sign of cautious reassurance. The eldest alpha lifted its head, glancing at the humans, their eyes meeting in silent acknowledgement that something profound had passed between them. The cub stirred, pressing its small body closer to the alphas, and a faint sound escaped its throat, a fragile call of life and presence. The humans whispered softly, their words carrying a tone of understanding and respect that seemed to wrap around the clearing like a warm breeze. The forest itself seemed to lean, in trees swaying gently, birds calling from the branches, and the faint scent of pine and earth filling the air. The alphas circled once more around the cub, then laid down their sides, brushing together a shield of warmth and protection. The humans took a small step back, giving space, yet remaining close enough to offer help if needed. The eldest alpha lifted its head one last time, eyes scanning the humans, and then the forest, a silent promise passing in the glance that grief could be met with compassion, that life could continue, that even in sorrow, the true face of humanity could be revealed, not in words or actions of dominance, but in patience, empathy, and quiet courage. The cubs stirred again, and the alphas exhaled a low rumble, a sound of relief and acceptance, and the forest seemed to hold its breath with them.